And I completely understand that point. But I think there's a fundamental difference between the US and how their overall political and the political relationship with business. And because you see, like, the head of I think the pharmaceutical company regulator is appointed by usually a president who's funded by another pharmaceutical company.
We like to think we're better in this country, but we have the whole revolving door of politics. So, the reason why so many government ministers and cabinet members have stood down now is because they know the game's up for them as a government. But there's an organisation called ECOBA, which is basically a body that the civil servants run, which allows or authorises former MPs, former ministers, former cabinet members to take up jobs. And it's normally a 2-year hiatus. And they're standing down now and running the clock down so that in 2 years' time, they can take on, if they've been running, let's say, for example, the Trade Department or whatever it is, they know the legislation, they know all the contacts of the civil servants, all the people in there. They've been writing down their contact book. They've been helping write the legislation, approving it. They know how the system works. They do their 2 years, they come out, and then one of the companies that wants to take them on will pay them a 6 or 7 figure salary to come in and advise them as an advisor or a consultant. And they will then say, well, these are the people you need to be speaking to if you want to do this for your company. And if you want to avoid this tax or this regulation, well, there are ways that can be done, which are quite legal, and here they are. And they pay good money for that. Now, that's not anything secret. That's why ECOBA exists. But we know it happens. We know it does happen, the revolving door. And there are ways around that. We can stop that. We can stop that from happening. But we can also ensure that as a country, in other countries, that would be called corruption, as far as I'm concerned. But that happens here in the UK, and that's seen as all part of the fair game, it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the game of politics.
So, how do you then, as MPs, former MPs leave office, what are they expecting to do then? Are they wait 2-3 years, then they can get a job? How is their livelihood kind of sustained by that? If you restrict the rights of a so-called individual, like completely sovereign individual who's not working in government anymore, how do you maintain their kind of livelihood?
I think that's a fantastic question, and I think
because they're people as well, right?
What it does, it undermines people's faith in democracy, and they are people. But I think it's entirely possible for me to go into politics, to come out of politics, and to use my knowledge to better things, to make things better, not necessarily to make a profit for companies or for companies to be able to circumvent legislation that's been put there for a purpose. So I think there are ways to tighten that up. I think there are ways. So there are now suggestions, for example, that MPs that break that code or MPs that are seen to kind of overstep the mark can lose their pension. And now I think that everything should be on the table. But I think a lot of this isn't just about legislation or the letter of the law. It's about political culture. Mm-hmm. If you have transparency, if you have accountability, then you're far less likely to have those kind of things happening. So, for example, we know at the moment we have a voting system. First past the post, which if you're a Conservative MP means that you can basically be elected with fewer votes. And if you're in somewhere in Norfolk, well, Liz Truss is in a safe seat. And Liz Truss, who has destroyed people's lives, has no fears about losing the next election when her government will probably lose it. She knows that she'll still have a seat. Is that right? And what that does, that breeds a contempt for politics. It breeds the wrong kind of culture in politics. And it also makes people think, actually, nothing will ever change if people like that can still win elections. So I think it's not just about the letter of the law. It's about changing political culture. You change political culture by making your political system more with a fairer voting system, more transparent and more open. And I think if you did that, and more accountable, if you did that and you devolve power out, then you begin to move away from these problems.